This week on The Record, funding fight at City Hall. The tug of war over a slice of the city's share of Rams settlement funds heats up as the Board of Aldermen push a compromise plan. Why teachers' unions are skeptical of a push to expand private early childhood education. Plus, the renewed Republican push for a state takeover of the city police department, what Mayor Jones told lawmakers in Jefferson City. But first, a second term for Donald Trump.
The golden age of America begins right now.
Swift executive actions from a president intent on fulfilling campaign promises and backlash some of those orders already face from Democratic leaders across the country. It's all coming up right now. Welcome to The Record. I'm Mark Maxwell. Donald Trump returned to the White House this week after he was sworn in as the 47th President of the United States. His inaugural address slammed the previous administration.
My recent election is a mandate to completely and totally reverse a horrible betrayal and all of these many betrayals that have taken place, and to give the people back their faith, their wealth, their democracy, and indeed their freedom. From this moment on, America's decline is over.
Hours after returning to the White House, the president issued several executive orders. One challenges the long-standing interpretation of the Constitution's 14th Amendment, which states anyone born in the U.S. is an American citizen.
It's a challenging day for Americans across this country as a result of what's happening in Washington, D.C. right now. We have already heard that one of the executive orders that's going to be issued is a rescinding of birthright citizenship. I want to be clear with all of you, that's unconstitutional, and we will not follow an unconstitutional order.
That was Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker on Tuesday. On Thursday, a federal judge temporarily blocked the president's order, saying it boggles the mind. Illinois was one of 4 states to file that successful challenge. And according to the court record, undocumented moms gave birth to 250,000 Americans in 2022. Nearly 10,000 of those mothers and their children were born in Illinois. The lawsuit says thousands of newborn babies will be stripped of their U.S. citizenship, will be rendered undocumented, subject to removal or detention. Many will become stateless. The lawsuit goes on to say they will lose their ability to obtain a Social Security number and to work lawfully. They would lose a right to vote, serve on juries, and run for certain offices. Illinois Attorney General Kwame Raoul is now on the record. And Attorney General, it's good to have you with us. We're reading some of the impact that you've described in this lawsuit. What would be the immediate impact of this executive order if it were allowed to stand?
We rely on citizen birth information for what is the Department of Public Health, Healthcare and Family Services, or various departments. And so, we've been accustomed to the 14th Amendment, Section 1 of the 14th Amendment, meaning what it says for some time now. And our government, just like other government and our citizenry, has relied on that plain language for the administration of responsibilities to our respective citizens.
Did I read correctly that you and some of the other attorneys general involved here have American citizenship by birthright?
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, and the executive order tries to define it in a certain way, but my mother was not yet a citizen at the time of my birth. My father, I believe, had been naturalized at the time of birth. Both of my parents were Haitian immigrants.
This only applies to people going forward 30 days after it was signed, and the courts have intervened already. But people in your position from this point going forward would no longer have that citizenship if this were allowed to stand. As we look at this, if we set this immigration issue aside for a moment and just look at the lawful exercise of executive power, on other issues, you have vigorously defended executive powers in an emergency, even over that of the legislature or of the courts. Do you consider the influx of newly arriving migrants an emergency, or do you acknowledge that the executive branch has the power to declare something like that an emergency?
The executive branch certainly has the power to respond to emergencies or even non-emergencies, and to there's limited action the executive branch can take through executive order. But it's important to note one of those things is not violating our Constitution, the plain language of our Constitution, whether in this case with regards to birthright citizenship is violative of the 14th Amendment, or with regards to the DOJ memo that was issued, the suggestion of commandeering state and local officials to do federal responsibility. Our Supreme Court has ruled twice already that's violative of our 10th Amendment.
And for our St. Louis viewers, of course, the 14th Amendment, rooted in St. Louis history, the Dred and Harriet Scott decision argued at the Supreme Court, first filed at a federal courthouse right down the street from our studios here now. I want to ask you, shifting gears here a little bit, about how local and state law enforcement might go about partnering up with, or how they're going to handle orders from federal law enforcement. We know that President Trump's administration has suggested local law enforcement should assist them in deporting undocumented migrants that are here without their proper paperwork. But you've just issued some guidance that says Illinois laws govern law enforcement interactions with immigrant communities, and says, quote, law enforcement agencies in Illinois are largely prohibited from participating in immigration enforcement. Is this, what's the reason for putting out this guidance now? Is there anything changing in the way you're putting forth these rules as they apply to the Illinois Trust Act?
We put out the guidance before, so this isn't just now happening, but we're making it available. We have heard from various law enforcement departments, and want to make it clear. And then one of the things I want to make clear is that even my office collaborates with federal law enforcement agencies, including Homeland Security investigations on criminal investigations. That nothing in the Trust Act prevents that collaboration. So it's important to note that there's nothing in the Trust Act or our guidance that suggests that we don't collaborate with criminal investigations. We do so on human trafficking, on drug trafficking, on organized retail crime, gun trafficking, and other matters, whether they involve non-citizens or citizens.
I suppose that's what I was trying to understand. Reading this guidance is, when is it appropriate for local or state law enforcement to collaborate with federal officials on immigration in particular? For example, I'm reading here from your guidance where it says a local law enforcement agency in Illinois cannot give an immigration agent access to individuals in its custody. But if they're in police custody, aren't they already suspected of a crime?
They may be suspected of a crime, and quite frankly, the federal law enforcement would have access to knowing that they're in custody. There are websites that even lay people can look up names and find out that they're in custody. So it doesn't require any collaboration on that front. But if there's a criminal investigation, if there's a criminal subpoena or something of that nature, law enforcement can and should collaborate. What law enforcement should not do is partake in civil enforcement of immigration. Our federal government has given that duty to Homeland Security through ICE, and it's their job. It's the job of local law enforcement to focus on enforcing the criminal laws of the state of Illinois.
It's quite a contrast between Illinois and Missouri. In Missouri, the Attorney General and the incoming governor have suggested that state and local law enforcement should go about every person suspected of a crime, running a background check on them to see if they have proper documentation. So it's an interesting split screen. In your guidance that you've given out to local law enforcement, you say Illinois police must notify a foreign government, or must allow that suspect to contact that foreign government if they arrest a foreign national, but cannot give that same notification to the American government. Is that the right policy?
That's what the guidance says, yeah.
I guess I'm asking for the justification there. It quotes the Vienna Convention, from 50 years ago. But what is the rationale that
whether it's from 50 years ago or not, the rationale is connected to the Vienna Convention.
Mm-hmm. And in today's context, why is that the right policy, that the law enforcement are prohibited from notifying the American government, but
because it's a policy that we entered into in the Vienna Convention, just as the right policy is to follow the 14th Amendment. 14th Amendment was more than 50 years ago. It still applies to today. And so we don't get to pick and choose.
I hear you. President Trump has also targeted diversity, equity, and inclusion benchmarks in federal government and federal agencies across the country. We're also seeing a number of large American corporations reverse course on DEI policies they've had in their corporations. That includes Walmart, and you've urged them in a recent op-ed to reconsider. You've highlighted Costco and maybe other big box stores like Target and others who have upheld or doubled down on their DEI. What do you see as the impetus for all this? You mentioned that in your op-ed I read that just because the politics are changing here doesn't mean that the background and the things that brought us to consider all this has changed.
That's right. Our country has a long history of having historically excluded some individuals from participation in all of the opportunities of economic opportunities and educational opportunities. And so there's been effort to make sure that there are pipelines and such to make sure that we reverse course on that. And, I strongly believe that that's a policy that we should embrace. We should embrace all Americans. We have non-discrimination laws, and we should not violate those, even in the interest of diversifying our workforce or diversifying our higher education institutions. But you can do things to make sure that you focus on being inclusive. There have been consulting companies that have analyzed this and demonstrated a strong business interest towards the bottom line of businesses to make sure they embrace diversity. They sell products to people of all races, right? And there's certain cultural differences that exist in different communities that might mandate different approaches to how you sell products and how you market them. It's valuable to have a diverse workforce and diverse leadership to make sure you implement such things.
And I saw in your op-ed that you even mentioned the term DEI hire being deployed in derisive fashion in some political context. But you do see, if I read you correctly, you seem to also suggest that maybe, if I'm reading you correctly, that some DEI pushes have gone too far. You say, quote, as we review and adjust programs where necessary. Where is it necessary to adjust some of these DEI programs in your view?
As I just said, wherever, if there are any programs that for whatever reason are discriminatory, just like any other discriminatory employment or education action, they should be reviewed. So anything that is a strict quota, for instance, versus having goals, having outreach programs, having diversity training, training on how you approach those with that might have disabilities. These things are being eliminated, and I think that's outrageous.
My last question for you, because I know you have a lot of important work on your desk as it pertains to this birthright citizenship lawsuit and a number of other things, but you talked about the majority opinion and a vocal minority in your op-ed. If that's true, why has some of this nativist, nationalist rhetoric been so effective?
Well, divisiveness has been effective in American politics of late. What has been used as a tool of it is social media. We collectively, as attorneys general, both Republican and Democrats, have come together on focusing on how social media has had negative impact on young people. But the reality is that social media has had such a negative impact on adults as well. And we're more divided as a country, unfortunately, because folks have focused on dividing us. And I think that's not in a long-term interest of our country. And I think we need to reverse course on that.
A lot of the billionaires who own those platforms sitting right there on the front row of the inauguration of President Trump. Perhaps more to come on that front with Illinois Attorney General Kwame Raoul. We'd love to have you back again in the future. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
A renewed push for St. Louis police to be under state control. Mayor Jones and Chief Tracy testifying at the Missouri Capitol advocating against that idea. Missouri Republicans are renewing their ongoing push to strip St. Louis of local control of its police department. Mayor Tashara Jones and Police Chief Robert Tracy traveled to the state capitol this week to testify against that idea. Lawmakers discussed the reasons why St. Louis crime trends are concerning, while St. Louis leaders point that crime is trending down. In the Missouri Senate, deja vu.
In recent years, St. Louis has been repeatedly identified as one of the most dangerous cities, not only in the United States, but throughout the world.
For several years now, State Senator Nick Schroer from St. Charles County has pushed a plan to take control of the police department away from the mayor and give it to a board of politically appointed commissioners.
I think that's disrespectful for people who don't live in the city to try to tell people in the city what's best for them.
And once again, Mayor Tashara Jones made the trek to Jefferson City to argue against it.
This legislation is not about public safety. If it were, I would expect a clear and compelling answer to this question. Why will state control make St. Louis safer? Under state control in 2006, St. Louis was the so-called most dangerous city in the country and ranked second most dangerous on the eve of the switch to local control in 2013. Right now, St. Louis is no longer considered to be one of the top 10 most dangerous cities.
Schroer suggested, without providing any specific examples, that perhaps police reports couldn't be trusted.
You'll hear today that over the last year, crime statistics in the city of St. Louis are on the decline, and therefore, this bill isn't necessary. The truth is, the reliability of those crime statistics has come under massive federal and state scrutiny.
And I've heard so many things in this place, it's just not true.
Chief Tracy addressed that claim directly.
Our statistics are showing crime is going down, Senator. It's very disappointing. You know why it's disappointing? Because you're disparaging all the good work of these officers that have been doing day in and day out.
Over and over again, Kansas City Democrats ask the question, if a state board of commissioners works so well, then why is crime on the rise there while it's on the decline in St. Louis? And Republicans pushing for a state takeover really had no coherent or logical answer to that question. The only tangible benefit they could dangle is the idea of a state mandate for a minimum number of police officers required to be hired on the force in St. Louis. But Chief Tracy himself sort of poked fun at that notion, suggesting there is no bus of new police officers pulling up out in front of the station anytime soon. Republicans are still pushing forward with this plan, but in other news, Missouri abortion rights supporters also gathered at the Capitol this week, rallying in defense of Amendment 3, which voters approved in the fall. It legalized abortion access, but still no clinic in Missouri holds a license to perform the procedure. Advocates are calling on lawmakers to support the will of the voters. Multiple anti-abortion bills have been filed in Missouri. When we come back, the latest debate brewing over how to spend the Rams settlement money in St. Louis. As city leaders continue the debate over how to spend the Rams settlement money, a pair of proposals could spend up to 10% or more of that money funding early childhood education. A compromise plan, now advancing its way through City Hall, would spend $30 to $34 million to launch a pilot program helping to pay for part of a city worker's child care costs. Other community providers could also tap into those funds if they help to train new child care workers. The Board of Aldermen could potentially expand that program at some point to other parents who are not city workers. Joining us now is Charlie Cooksey with We Power and Byron Clemens, a spokesperson with the American Federation of Teachers, St. Louis 420. It's good to have you both with us. Byron, I would like to start with you if I can. What is the current need? What is the current capacity in the city to provide childcare for early age children, and what is the need to expand?
Well, there is pre-K in the St. Louis public schools with a state-approved curriculum and certified teachers, and that's tuition-free in all the elementary schools in the city of St. Louis. And that's pre-K, it's not daycare per se. There is a need for daycare. We're just not sure We Power Opportunity Trust should have anything to do with it.
He name-checked you there. We Power is your organization. Would you like to just address that first part? He's putting you in league with Opportunity Trust. I know you've suggested that, well, how do you explain your relationship with that group?
Sure. I don't understand why you keep referencing Opportunity Trust. We Power is completely independent. We do not have a relationship with Opportunity Trust, and we are focused on early childhood.
And as in the focus, we saw in the survey that the City Board of Aldermen put out that childcare and expanding childcare ranked very high across the city. What was We Power's role in building community support or in influencing the outcome of that survey?
Yeah, we simply went to residents across the region and asked them to take the survey. and they voted, and the voting showed that early childhood is a top priority for Black residents and for low-income households, and top 4 priority among all the folks that engage in the voting process.
At the start of this debate, there were 2 rival bills, and the one backed by the business community, the big lobbying powerhouse Greater St. Louis Inc., did not have any funding for early childhood. Now they are supporting it. What does it mean to have the business community backing this idea?
I believe it's a smart decision on behalf of the business community. They are working to grow our economy. You cannot grow our economy without investing in early childhood.
As we mentioned off the top, part of this money could go to help train new child care workers. And Byron, if I understand, some St. Louis public school teachers could do that training, and they could also tap into some of this funding. Is that a positive?
That's an offer that's on the table. It was mentioned in the Board of Aldermen as a proposal that we would be glad to partner with child care providers, with certified teachers, with state-approved curriculum. And I think that's a worthy project to consider. But we are concerned about We Power Opportunity Trust and their outsized influence in this whole process. They had paid, quote, volunteers who drove that whole petitioning process and took part in the surveys that were put up in a portal, kind of doing an end around from the Board of Aldermen. And we didn't support that. But we were in support of Board Bill 131, the pure bill that was up, and still do.
I want to put a pin in this. We'll come back to that in just a minute if I can. I can sense that there's some tension in the funding and the fight of how the early childhood model goes forward in St. Louis. Is it appropriate for people other than St. Louis Public Schools to also lift part of the burden? If it takes a village, should there be other providers, private care providers that help offer early childhood?
Absolutely, there should be.
And to the comments he just made, would you like to respond to that?
Yeah, it sounds like we're more on the same page than I realized. However, Board Bill 131 had no support for education. I think we both believe that we need to invest in education. So Board Bill 153 has nothing to do with We Power benefiting financially, has nothing to do with Opportunity Trust benefiting financially. Also, I would love for you to quit combining We Power and the Opportunity Trust, because we are 2 separate entities that have 2 different agendas, and they are not the same.
Is it fair to say that there's some suspicion that maybe kids would go to an early childhood education provider that is private and not affiliated with a teachers union, and then from there they might matriculate up into a charter school? Is that part of the concern the teachers union has?
It is our concern. We Power Opportunity Trust constantly lobbies in Jefferson City for so-called school choice.
We Power has never lobbied for school choice. That is inaccurate. You need to quit telling things that are not accurate.
And the millionaires who back this whole thing have hundreds of millions of dollars. They could fund daycare on their own. They don't need to feed at the public trough.
Does We Power have a position on the unionization of the early childhood workforce?
We are pro-union. We would love for the child care community to get unionized. We have never been against that idea, and we have never advocated for school choice or charter schools ever at the local or state level. And if there's evidence that proves that wrong, please direct me to it, and I will take ownership. But it is unfair for you to continue to say things that are not accurate or publicly documented.
I want to ask you also, Byron,
it's on the Opportunity Trust webpage.
We have nothing to do with the Opportunity Trust. So if you want to make those assertions about them, that's fine, but we are We Power. And there's no proof that we have ever advocated for school choice. None anywhere.
I want to draw a distinction, because we're all entitled to advocate as Americans.
Absolutely.
We have that power. Unions join forces with people that do the same work and advocate. Sometimes they do so with the help of, I'm going to call it dark money, right? What's the distinction? But if a union can advocate for something...
We also advocate for public education. One thing I want to mention, a study called Good Jobs, Disparity in the St. Louis region and how funding is given to school districts. And St. Louis Public Schools were shortchanged about $200 million over the last 6 years in property taxes. Through TIFs and tax abatements.
But you wouldn't say that right now, as it stands, at current staffing levels and with the current financial situation at SLPS, that they could take on the burden of providing early childhood education to the city of St. Louis?
Certainly $200 million in TIFs and tax abatements could help with that.
So What's the pathway here forward? Because right now, it looks like early childhood education is now included in the city, I don't want to say approved bill, but the bill that has momentum right now, and its share of funding is growing. There has been some criticism or some skepticism from board members, one even calling it a special interest. How do you take feedback like that?
If early childhood is special interest, then so be it. I believe that whether we use that language or not, we know that there are 20,000 children across St. Louis City who need access to quality early childhood. They are ages 0 through 5, and that we have to address that. Half of those children are living in poverty, and most of the children living in poverty in early childhood age do not have access to a quality, affordable seat. And we have to start providing access at birth so that children can enter SLPS, enter kindergarten, prepared to thrive.
I want to be clear. It's right now this program, this pilot program, would only apply to I think there are roughly 5,000 city workers, and surely all of them are not parents. So it would be a small pool of people. It might expand beyond. I know you'd like to see it expand citywide. Byron, can you give us any insight into the posture of AFT, the position that AFT takes right now, if the teachers union and its members are asked to help come forward and train the next generation of early childhood educators? But some of those people would be
pleased and proud to take part in that.
Even if they worked at private providers?
Well, yes, but we just don't see where WePower fits into this at all. And the only record we have right now is what happened with Prop R, which was another WePower Opportunity Trust venture. And the money from that has been used mostly for administrative costs, one not-for-profit helping another not-for-profit. And that's, unfortunately, these not-for-profits have very high administrative costs.
Do you have any anything you can use to illustrate how much of the funding you'd like to see go toward teachers and the actual work as opposed to top-heavy administration?
Yeah, the bill that was introduced this past week had a clause in there, I believe, said that no more than 5% can go towards admin. And Prop R went straight to child care providers, and we heard child care educators, providers at the hearing in December speak about how they received the money and they were able to improve the quality of care offered through Prop R. And we are hopeful and excited that the same thing will happen with the RAM settlement funds.
All right, Byron Clemens and Charlie Cooksey, two passionate advocates fighting in the education space, albeit in different corners of this particular conversation. Thank you both for joining us. You can see a bit of the flavor of the debate that is roiling in City Hall right now, but perhaps we can hear from more of you in the days and weeks to come as this Rams money and its plan comes together. We're back in a moment. Welcome back. Before we go, we have to correct the record. From time to time, we hear politicians say things that aren't quite right. Sometimes they're flat out wrong. And when they say it on the public record, I just get this urge to correct it, especially when they're talking about us.
ASDK has now left the city of St. Louis, citing safety reasons for their employees.
No, we haven't. As you can see, our station is still located in downtown St. Louis. And while you might have seen recent news reports that, yes, our management is considering a move out of this massive space built many years ago into a more modern space with attached parking, we haven't done it yet. And if we do, our station management tells us we have no plans to leave the city of St. Louis itself. And look, while a lot of factors go into any company making a decision to move, I can promise you, no one at our company stopped to ponder whether we might stay in this building if only we just had 4 more police commissioners. That's what this big political fight was all about this week in Jefferson City. Republicans renewing their push to take control of the city's police department away from the mayor and diminish the voice of the voters who elect the mayor. Only one other city in Missouri has a state-appointed board of commissioners that controls its department. That's Kansas City, and crime there has been going up lately. Crime here has been going down. That's if you believe the police are telling us the truth. And get this, House Republican Brad Crist, who's pushing this plan in the House, apparently doesn't believe the police reports. He, too, cited this TV station as he made his case that those crime stats can't be trusted.
I just want to know that, yeah, because you're saying all these statistics, but you don't believe the ones that this administration, I'm assuming,
the police department has them. They used to be the gold standard in issuing these crime data, and that shifted a few years ago. They just put out their crime data. KSDK asked them for that crime data, and they wanted to charge them $14,000 to get the crime data through a Sunshine request.
Hold up. I'm the guy who filed that Sunshine request he referred to. It had nothing to do with crime data. Instead, we wanted to see about internal emails, about specific incidents of crime downtown from a very narrow date range over the summer. And yes, the price tag, that part is true. The city initially stonewalled our efforts, but the mayor's office tells us they're now working to get us those records at a much lower price. What a bargain. But the representative's attempts to discredit police data, it was all based on bad information. Now, to be fair to Representative Christ, Mayor Jones herself, when I asked her recently, why are they charging us so much? She too, at least at first, seemed to think maybe I was asking her about crime stats. I wasn't. And our request for open records also was not. We just wanted to see how they talk about crime behind closed doors. And maybe eventually we'll get those answers. Then they too can be part of the record. Hope that clears it all up. Anyway, that's all of our time. But you can catch more political news on the 5 Plus app. We'll be back here at the same time next week. Until then, we're off the record.